Hello. So, I am getting increasingly frustrated by the right's depiction of President Obama's pick of nominee for the Supreme Court, Judge Sonia Sotomayor. Right now it seems to be based around this speech she gave in which she seems to imply that a Latino will make wiser decisions than a white man. I found the speech and read it, and what I prepared here in this video is a summary of that speech so that everyone can see the context of that speech. Now, I encourage everyone to go and read the speech themselves if they're interested in this, but if not, you can simply watch my video. The version of the speech that I read I found on Berkeley Law School's news archives, and I was going to read the little preface to the speech to put that in context. This is Judge Sonia Sotomayor of the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, who gave the speech at the Berkeley La Raza Law Journal's 12th Annual Symposium on October 26, 2001. I emphasize that this is my summary, which means it is my interpretation of the important concepts being discussed, so you really need to read the speech to get the whole context, even though I do believe that my summary of the concepts is fairly accurate. Okay, so here goes. The speech is titled A Latina Judge's Voice, obviously by Sonia Sotomayor, and I'm going to skip all the introductions and stuff like that. So basically, she is delivering the Judge Mario G. Olmos lecture, and the speech promotes the legacy of Olmos, who is noted as a man committed to public service and dedicated to promoting equality and justice for all people. So obviously a major theme of this conference is equality, and I believe it's natural that Sotomayor is going to appeal to that audience when she speaks. Sotomayor says that she intends to touch on the themes of the conference, which means discussing her Latina identity, how it developed, and the influence she thinks it has on her presence on the bench. She defines herself as a New Yorkrican, which means she's the daughter of immigrants from Puerto Rico during World War II, and she says her identity was forged and nurtured by the shared experiences and traditions of her family. She discusses the ethnic food that defines her family's gatherings, her own unique food tastes, the music they played, the Spanish love songs they enjoyed, and the Spanish comedian she liked to watch. She says that these things in themselves do not make her a Latina because each Latin American community has their own unique traditions. Sotomayor says that a definition of what a Latina is in a historical geographic context cannot provide an adequate explanation of why a Latino or Latina identifies so strongly with the communities in which their parents raised them. So Sotomayor goes on to discuss a tension in America surrounding its identity, at once proud of ethnic diversity, recognizing how it shapes and enriches our society, and yet insisting on functioning in a race and colorblind way, ignorant of differences. She defines this using an expression as the debate between the melting pot and the salad bowl. She says many struggle with this tension of maintaining and promoting a different ethnic or cultural identity in a society unsure about how to deal with them. She says political struggles do not create her Latina identity, but the way she lives her life does. And she learned the wonders of having a Latino soul from her parents' example, which included a love for America and its opportunities. Success, she says, is difficult for Latinos, and while the struggle does not create her identity, it does inspire how she lives her life. Sotomayor then spends some time discussing the progress made in the number of Latinos and women who serve as judges in the Supreme, Circuit, and District Courts, and notes that women, Latinos, and African Americans are still underrepresented in all those areas. She also notes that the majority of judge nominations that the Senate delayed confirming for more than a year or never confirmed were women and minorities. And this, she says, demonstrates a continued need for Latino organizations and community groups to promote equality for women and people of all color. The focus of her speech, she says, is more on what it will mean to have more women and people of color on the bench. She cites Southern District Judge Miriam Cedarbaum, who claimed there was an insignificant number of minorities on the bench to draw valid conclusions from their acts on what their presence will mean to the development of law. Sotomayor claims we do have enough minorities on the bench, and pondering that question should not be ignored. Cedarbaum expresses concern for any analysis of minorities on the bench, which presumably ends with the conclusion that minorities are generally different from men. that there's a danger in presuming judging should be based on gender or other things, and she says that perceptions of difference between men and women led to many paternalistic laws, like notions that women weren't smart enough to vote during the suffragette movement. So Cederbaum believes that judges must transcend their personal sympathies and prejudices and aspire towards fairness and integrity based on the reason of law. Sotomayor wonders if this is always or even often possible. She wonders if ignoring difference is a disservice to law and society. This, she says, is something minority judges must address, whatever the reason for their different perspectives, whether it's because of their cultural experiences or due to the basic differences in logic and reasoning. She cites the thesis of Professor Stephen Carter of Yale Law School that in any group there is diversity of opinion because of both a diversity in experience and thought. Sotomayor says that no one minority judge speaks with the voice of their whole minority, but with their own voice. She accepts the propositions of Yale Law School Judge Judith Resnick that judging is an exercise of power, and Harvard Law School Professor Martha Minow that there is no objective stance, just a series of perspectives, and there is no escape from choice in judging. She accepts that the experiences of women and minorities affect their decisions. The aspiration to impartiality is just that, because it denies that different choices are made based on experiences. Not one person in any minority, but enough minorities in enough cases will make a difference in judging. She notes a case in which 3 women judges with 2 men dissenting denied an abusive father's visitation rights. And her conclusion is that it takes a group to have an effect on the development of law and judging. So a possibility that Sotomayor says she's less offended by than Cederbaum is that whether from experience or physiological or cultural differences, gender and national origins may and will make a difference in judging. Now this is the key paragraph that she's been criticized for, so I'm going to read this one directly. So this is a direct quote. She says, "Justice O'Connor has often been cited as saying that a wise old man and wise old woman will reach the same conclusion in deciding cases. I am not so sure Justice O'Connor is the author of that line, since Professor Resnick attributes that line to Supreme Court Justice Coyle. I am also not sure that I agree with that statement. First, as Professor Martha Minow has noted, there can never be a universal definition of wise. Second, I would hope that a wise Latina woman with the richness of her experiences would more often than not reach a better conclusion than a white male who hasn't lived that life." Now, it is my interpretation that what is implied but not stated is that she is referring to a decision about Latino issues or that involves them, in which case a Latina having the experience of that situation naturally understands better the life of a Latino. Sotomayor then points out that wise men like Oliver Wendell Holmes and Justice Cardozo voted in cases to uphold sex and race discrimination, and that not until 1972 did the Supreme Court uphold the claim of a woman in a gender discrimination case. So Sotomayor says she does not believe that others with different experiences cannot understand the values and needs of a different group, but that understanding takes time and effort, something not all are willing to give, that others' ability to understand is limited by their experiences, and that still others just don't care. One must then accept the proposition, she says, that the presence of women and minorities on the bench will make a difference. Personal experiences, she says, affects the facts that judges choose to see. Sotomayor says she hopes to take the good from her experiences and press them into areas in which she is not familiar, that she doesn't know exactly what that difference will be in her judging, but that she accepts there will be some differences based on her gender and heritage. She hopes that the questions she raises will encourage others to make their own evaluations. She asks, what does and should being a minority mean to one's lawyering? For men, what experiences or attitudes need to be improved on to reach the enlightenment that other men have achieved? She asks how to change the fact that in every task force study of gender and race bias in the courts, minorities report in higher percentages than white men that their minority helped shape their careers, and that a statistically significant number of minority lawyers and judges have experienced bias in the court. This is going a little longer than I expected, and it's almost done, so I'm just going to stop here and put the rest in a second part. But I feel strongly enough about this, and I think it's important enough to continue with the full 12 minutes or so. So if you're interested, please watch the second part too.